Resuming debate, the honourable member Simcoe Grey.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I think at this time the interpreters may get a little bit of a break in the speed of the discussion here, so that might be nice going into the weekend. Also, I just want to quickly say, as the last speaker, I believe, today, we have Remembrance Week, Remembrance Day, and how important it is for all of us to pay tribute and to make sure that we attend services to everyone that's watching here today. I'm very fortunate in Simcoe Grey to have base Borden there. So not only do I represent all the people that are there, but I represent the largest training base, and the military is an important part of our community, not just for what they do in the military, but for what they do for all of us as citizens and civilians, whether it's volunteering for hockey teams, baseball teams, or whatever it might be. So hopefully everyone has an opportunity to go to one of those services. Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to rise today to speak to the amended motion concerning the Liberal Green Slush Fund. Known to some as Sustainable Development Technology Canada, this fund has become arguably the biggest transfer of contracts and tax dollars to Liberal friends since the sponsorship scandal which toppled the Paul Martin government. Except there is one fundamental difference between then and now. It wasn't as hard to make it ends meet back in 2004. So while Liberals were rewarding their friends is nothing new, back in 2004, people just saw it as business as usual. In 2004, yearly inflation was 1.27%. Most of the people had jobs, and this allowed them to pay their bills and save for a vacation, and also for their future and their children's future. Liberals' waste was frustrating, definitely, but that's just how Liberals do business. People were not struggling as they watched Liberals line their friends' pockets with their tax dollars back then. But let's fast forward to 2024 and how things have changed. We have tent cities in the major centres, and now they're even in small towns in my riding. Crime rates have soared. The daily essentials are no longer affordable since double-digit inflation has driven up the price on almost everything. It's difficult to save for family vacations. Liberals here in the House even mock Canadians' desire for a great summer road trip. It's near impossible to save for retirement or to put money away for your children's future. A good government would do whatever it can to lower the cost of its living for its citizens. But we do not have a good government here in Canada. No. The Liberal NDP government instead raises taxes and takes more money from all of you, making it harder and harder for a regular middle-class family just to get ahead. It takes all that money and then hands some of it back to certain targeted groups and then screams that Conservatives are going to all of a sudden take it all away. That's how Liberals operate. Take from everyone and then throw some pennies out to Canadians and have them fight it out amongst themselves. Tax, divide, and conquer is the ethos of today's Liberal Party. But Canadians now, more than ever, see through this strategy more and more. Canadians who have done everything they were told to do are finally fed up. Get an education, work hard, be honest, obey the law, pay your taxes, and you will be rewarded. Seems like a quaint idea. Instead, Canadians watch more and more of their paychecks get taken by a federal Liberal NDP government, which continues to get bigger while spending their hard-earned money on pet projects and sweetheart deals for their friends. In 2004, Liberal corruption and mismanagement annoyed Canadians. In 2024, it's made them angry. And the most surprisingly thing about this is that the Liberal NDP government members seem to be in shock as to why Canadians are so angry. When I last spoke on the Green Slush Fund a couple weeks ago, I outlined how this was just another in a long line of Liberal scandals. Scandals like We Charity and the $1 billion it was given after hiring the Prime Minister's brother and mother, or S&C Lavalin, which had the Prime Minister personally intervening to help get it off of fraud charges and for the low cost of $100,000 in donations to this Liberal Party. Exactly. Or the Aga Khan, which saw the Prime Minister, the member of NDG Westmount, the member for St. John's South, Mount Pearl, and their families get a $271,000 vacation in exchange for a $50 million in tax dollars. We can't forget the Pierre Elliott Trudeau Foundation taking money from a Beijing-connected billionaire in exchange for future considerations from the communist government. I barely even got to touch on the $237 million former Liberal MP Frank Bellis got for ventilators, which may not have even been delivered. Or GC Strategies, which got $20 million to build the Arrive scam, which was supposed to only cost $80,000. Madam Speaker, most Canadians are not better off after 9 years of Liberal corruption and mismanagement. But their insiders and friends are way better off. Friends like the Environment Minister's former boss, the founder and owner of Cycle Capital, André-Lise Mitteau. While Ms. Mitteau sat on the board of the Green Slush Funds, she helped herself to $114 million tax dollars, which she funneled to companies she had invested in. Her then senior advisor, the current Minister of the Environment, had 25 meetings with the Prime Minister's office and Department of Industry to help seal the deal. Ms. Mitteau says her company tripled in value during this time. We know that the Environment Minister remains a shareholder in this company to this day. He won't say how much he owns, but he certainly has personally benefited from this overt corruption. It may be hard to believe for many of us, but the Environment Minister was actually a very wanted commodity by the federal Liberals in 2019. How better to demonstrate your adherence to the climate change agenda than by recruiting one of the most radical environmentalists out there? Despite some association with Quebec separatists and his public support for socialism, the Liberal Party was desperate to improve its image, and the eco-activists, so landing the present Environment Minister was a challenge the Prime Minister relished. But what did it cost? How many of the 25 meetings were also about recruiting the Environment Minister to run for the Liberal Party? What was the price to get a rumoured separatist and committed socialist to becoming part of the pipeline-owning Liberal government? Madam Speaker, Canadians are frustrated. They're frustrated because in Canada, for the longest time, we were told if you work hard, you will get ahead. And if you work hard and pay your taxes, you'll be taken care of when you retire. But those promises, they've been broken. After 9 years of this Liberal government, the Canada so many of us grew up in is gone. People are working harder than ever before. The price of housing and the commute to get to work has grown, while the wages of the working people has stagnated in Canada. What's worse, this Liberal government has overseen the biggest increase in the cost of living since another Trudeau was Prime Minister. Under the Liberals, you pay more for groceries, you pay more for gas, for your home, for your family, and you drive longer to get your job. But since your wage has likely not increased much and cost of everything has skyrocketed, your quality of life and the time you enjoy with your family has declined. This is the reality for many Canadians as they watch Liberals, their friends and insiders get multi-million-dollar contracts and sweetheart perks they can only imagine. Every day, I get people in my riding either phoning or emailing the office saying how frustrated they are or how hard it is to get by. I say to get by because that's all they've given up on, getting ahead under this government. They just want to get by. People like Carolyn, a senior in my riding. Carolyn turned 65 in March. She has been collecting CPP and expected to automatically receive OAS after her 65th birthday, as her husband had. When May came and she hadn't received anything, she contacted Service Canada. She was told it doesn't necessarily start automatically for some people, and that she needed to apply. Carolyn completed her application and submitted it. She was told it would take over 100 days to process. So she waited. Over 100 days, in fact, she waited. And nothing. Crickets. She contacted Service Canada again, and again, and again, only to be told she had missed completing one small section in her application.
Shame.
But no one ever thought to tell her. Despite 100,000 new bureaucrats being hired since the Liberals took office, over 100 days went by, and not one person at the Government of Canada thought maybe it might be a good idea or consider it to reach out and let her know. Madam Speaker, do you know what she was told? Start over. Apply again, then wait 100 more days. There was no let's fill that section out together, or let me fill it in for you, or apply again, but we'll process it immediately because it's already been 100 days. So she applied again from scratch. But she also contacted my office shortly thereafter to let us know how ridiculous this whole process was. So we pushed on her behalf. Now she'll be getting her arrears in 5 days, and regular payments will start at the end of this month. We have lots of stories like this. The frustration of dealing with the biggest, most expensive government in Canadian history. Carolyn faced an unresponsive bureaucracy for months to get a few $100 she's entitled to as a senior, while Liberal friends and insiders continue to get millions of dollars in contracts and zero accountability. That's really why people are so frustrated. Or what about people like Travis in my riding? Travis works hard. He pays his taxes. Travis is proud of his family. Travis has lived in Angus since 1996 and in the same home since 2007. Recently, though, there's been a lot of growth in this area, with many new developments taking place as people have left Toronto for slightly more affordable properties and obviously better federal representation, and they moved to Simcoe Grey. There's been so much growth that Canada Post had to change postal codes. Inexplicably, it was existing residents who were given new postal codes, though, instead of the people moving into the new developments. What's worse is that when these residents began updating their new postal codes with their insurance companies, their rates jumped. In Travis's case, his home insurance went up 50%, and his car went up 50% as well.
Ridiculous.
Seemed bizarre, so my office investigated it further. It turns out the new postal codes put longtime rural residents like Travis into what is now considered an urban postal code. And because crime is now out of control in our cities, thanks to the Liberals' soft on crime policies,
That's right.
insurance rates have skyrocketed. And if you're lucky enough to have what is considered an urban postal code, your rates will have jumped as well. Even if you're near the same house for many, many years, since Canada Post is about as accountable as the Liberal government, Travis was stuck trying to appeal this ripoff to the Ombudsman. But even they couldn't help. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in my riding that have faced that this year. I have been bombarded with calls because their insurance has went up, they haven't moved, and it's ridiculous right now because people are having a tough time getting by. It's been extremely frustrating and expensive, and it's been a hassle for all these hardworking people just trying to get ahead. And all the while, Liberal insiders are getting millions of dollars, no questions asked. And Liberal members pretend to be outraged as to why we're still talking about this matter. How dare opposition members take them to task over corruption and complete mismanagement? It's because of people like Travis and Carolyn who play by the rules but have a harder and harder time getting ahead. Or how about Colleen, another constituent of mine in Simcoe Grey? She contacted my office back in March when CRA sent her notice that she had an $8,000 debt dating back to 2017 for benefits she was not entitled to. CRA took issue that Colleen had said she was separated, but she was still living in the same house with her former partner. Life is really expensive for Canadians post-COVID, But even in 2017, it was difficult for those going through a divorce or separation to get a new home. So Colleen took the advice of her lawyer and for financial reasons, remained in the lower level of the house until it could be sold. The sale took a year. Colleen isn't the only person who has faced this sort of situation. I'm sure some of the members in this House are aware of similar cases. Colleen and her husband's separation was documented as May 1st, 2017. They began separate lives. They even had separate schedules to use the one kitchen in the home. Oddly, while CRA came after her demanding $8,000 in payments, it accepted the date of separation for her now ex-husband, who was living in the same address.
I'm
Debate. The
having a
member from Simcoe Grey has 4 minutes and 10 seconds left on the call. The honourable member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's always an honor to rise on behalf of all the great residents in Simcoe Grey, and I just want to have a quick thank you, if I might. Last week was Remembrance Day, so I was fortunate. I have 15 Remembrance Day ceremonies, and I attended 2 on the actual Remembrance Day. It's the only 2 I can meet during that time period with driving, but I just want to thank those volunteers in my EDA for helping out to make sure a wreath was placed at each event. And also I had many members out this weekend, volunteers. Once again, thank you. 2 parades, one in Angus and one in Collingwood, the first of 2. I have many parades as well, so thank you for your support. For those that weren't here the last time I spoke, I only have a short period of time unless everyone wants to start at the beginning. I just was basically talking at the beginning of the speech about a lot of the scandals, scandal after scandal after scandal, whether it was the wee charity, S&C Lavalin, and now the largest one, probably the Screen Slush Fund, and just the frustration. So, and I was just at the point where I was talking about some of my residents, like Stephanie, who started a new poultry farm in my riding. She was due a GST rebate in April, but hadn't received it by June, so she reached out to my office. In July, she was told it was under audit and to follow up in 3 months. Already frustrated after the 3 months, she said that the GST refund could really help to keep her new business going. But it's government, so we waited until that October 3rd. And guess what we were told, Mr. Speaker? What? That there was no audit noted on her file at all, and no one was sure what was holding up the refund. Wow. A week later, CRA said there was no agent on her file at all. For 9 months, this brand new business had been waiting for a much needed rebate check. But CRA had no one on the file. Wow. Couldn't say why the refund had not been processed, and couldn't tell her when it actually might be. Another incredibly frustrating experience for a Canadian just trying to get ahead. And as I have said here before, all of this while Liberals direct $338 million to projects in which board members of the Green Slush Fund had a direct conflict of interest. For anyone who's paying attention right now, that is why so many people are frustrated with this Prime Minister and want him to go. Even some members of the Liberal Party are starting to understand that as well. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to end my speech with the words of one of these courageous whistleblowers who helped bring the Auditor General's attention to the corruption at the Green Slush Fund. And I quote, "The true failure of the situation stands at the feet of our current government, whose decisions to protect wrongdoers and cover up their findings over the last 12 months is a serious indictment of how our democratic systems and institutions are being corrupted by political interference." I want to take this opportunity to thank that whistleblower to bring it to light. We don't need to see this. That's why we're seeing the frustration. So, Mr. Speaker, it's time to axe the tax. It's time for us to build the homes. It's time to fix the budget, and it's time to stop the crime. Frustrated Canadians have had enough. They're worried about another budget and what this government will do to all of those individuals and how it's going to affect their life. It's time for us to call a carbon tax election and let them decide what is the right thing to do. It's time to bring it home. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.